In Second Peter, he argues that believers must remember the word of the Lord, which warns them of false teachers and destructive heresies. In Second Peter chapter 2, verse 1, he will begin to describe these false prophets and false teachers. He says, "Now indeed there came a false prophets among the people." That's true from all of the Old Testament through the New Testament and our day today. "Just as there will also be false teachers among you. Such a type of people or person will secretly, surreptitiously introduce heresies that lead to destruction, even denying the master who bought them." This word "bought them" is the word "redeemed them." And just briefly, there are many who say that Jesus died only for the elect, because if Jesus died for unbelievers and they're not saved, then he died in vain. What they fail to realize is that Christ died to be the basis of salvation and condemnation. And you can look at this limited atonement video that I have on my YouTube site here. But he says, even denying, they are denying the redemptive master, Lord, and they will bring swift destruction to themselves. And many will follow their debauchery. And because of them, the false teachers, the way of the truth will be vilified. People will identify them with the true faith, see the debauchery, the greediness of their lives, and they will vilify Christianity. Many will follow their debauchery, and because of them, false teachers, the way of truth will be vilified. Verse 3, and by means of greed, for greed, they will exploit you by means of fabricated statements, to whom a judgment from long ago is not idle, and their destruction is not asleep. We sometimes wonder, where is God? Why isn't he judging? He has established that condemnation long ago, and the destruction is coming. But notice fabricated statements, and this is so true. I remember years ago, Peter Popoff was exposed by an agnostic atheist gentleman, and he said, there's two things I learned when I was at Peter Popoff's crusades. Number one, that God is a woman, and number two, that God, what word am I looking for? That God speaks on the radio wave of 75.2 or something. Peter Popoff had a very small hearing aid in his ear, and his people would go out ahead of time and gather information from people, give it to his wife, and then when Peter Popoff went into the crowd, his wife was communicating with him through that little device. They are frauds. They are fabricating things. They are based on greed. And one of the things to get blessed by God with these people is you've got to send them the money. Well, that's enough of that. I feel better. But these people are out there. Now, understand, since God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into Tartarus, that I believe is angels that fell with Satan, and then in a particular judgment, a certain number were sent to Tartarus and handed them over to pits of darkness reserved for judgment. This is what influences my interpretation of some of the First Peter passages. He says they are reserved for judgment, and he did not spare the ancient world, but protected Noah, a preacher of righteousness, looking back to the flood, the eighth person, when he brought a flood on the world of the ungodly. and he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to total destruction by reducing the cities to ashes and having made them an example to those who would live ungodly at any time in the future. So Peter is going through the great judgments of the Old Testament. Sodom and Gomorrah, Noah, total destruction, making them an example to those who would live ungodly at that time in the future. In other words, warning them to turn from those wicked ways. Verse 7, and he rescued righteous Lot. Now, it's hard to see how righteous Lot was in his life, but he was righteous because of the Abrahamic covenant. Who was oppressed, Lot was oppressed by the debauchery of lawless men, because by what he saw and heard, the righteous man in his standing, while residing among them, felt his righteous soul tormented day after day by lawless deeds. And you ask yourself, why did he keep living among them? Probably greed. And you remember when he left, his wife wanted to go back. And you remember when he left, the behavior of his daughters, creating two peoples through an incestuous relationship with Lot. It's worth going back and reading this story again. Righteous in his standing, certainly not in his behavior. Peter summarizes it in verse 9. The Lord knows how to rescue the reverent from temptation and to keep the unrighteous under punishment until judgment day, and especially those who move about after the flesh. That's the Adamic nature, with the corrupt desires and those despising authority. And this is probably angelic authority, but they would certainly, as we see in these epistles, that there are those false prophets and false teachers who reject the authority of the true apostles and the true teachers.